Good afternoon, everybody, and I just wanted to say thank you for having us along here today. So I'm Louise Ball, I'm the Commercial Director, and I work under BPP's School of Technology. And what we do at BPP is we work closely with our clients. So it's very interesting that the results of the poll said that a number of organisations are struggling with the skills. And this is what we find, because a number of our clients, they are set to be disrupted and they're not using their data effectively. So we work really, really closely with our clients. They've set out within their strategy this intention that they want to increase the use of analytics, they want to increase the use of technology, they want to be using the data to its full potential. And we're very consultative. So we work alongside our clients. We get under the skin of where the skills gaps are within their organisations, what skills people need by carrying out a diagnostic. And then from there, we will put together programmes that are very tailored and very specific to that organisation. So one of the things that I find interesting is that, data literacy, it's for everybody. It's not just for kind of data scientists or Python coders. It's ubiquitous now. And there's a stat that I've seen that according to LinkedIn, 39% of high paid job roles now require some form of data skills and data analytics. So this is just an introduction to BPP. We are an education provider. We've been in the market for over 40 years. Over here in the UK, we are responsible for probably training 2/3 of the country's lawyers, 2/3 of the country's accountants, but technology and specifically data analytics is a strategic imperative for us. So that's just a bit of background in terms of where we are. So here's an image in 2005, and this was taken at St. Peter's Square for the announcement of Pope Benedict. And here we are at the same square 8 years later. So this is in 2013. And as you can see here, everyone has a digital device, so whether that be a phone or a tablet. So we jump forward in time 3 years, and this is when Hillary Clinton was on the presidential campaign. Here we can see that everybody has a mobile phone, but what you see here is that everybody is taking a picture of themselves with Hillary Clinton. And what you will have found is that these photos were being shared all around the globe. So welcome to the world of big data. So what are the market factors that are affecting big data? What is it that makes it feasible, sustainable and desirable to organisations? Well, organisations that are mastering their use of big data and analytics, they are becoming very, very successful in a short period of time. So if we think of examples such as Uber, Amazon, Netflix, and we are all connected. So data is everywhere. So organically, we have more data, we have more systems, we have more applications. Everything is more available to us. It's more accessible. The cost of storage has come down, and obviously our compute power has increased in today's modern world. So with 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years, and we have worldwide volumes of data that are predicted to grow by 61% by the year 2025. And all of this is creating this self-perpetuating kind of flywheel. The effect of having better analytics begets having more data, and the more data we have more motivation to do more analytics with it. So businesses around the world and organisations that we're working with in particular are rallying to develop their internal analytics expertise to be able to exploit this data. And by using our data, we're able to find patterns. And by understanding these patterns, we're able to make better decisions. So we talk about data-driven decisions. So these are decisions that are based on metrics as opposed to gut feel or intuition. And instinct is really important too. But when we bring these things together, when we bring intuition with data analytics, this is when the best decisions are formulated. And this puts us in a position to become more competitive. Then we consider what AI does, and that gives us the ability to predict what may happen in the future. So this is a big motivator and a big payoff for big data. But we can't have good AI without having good underlying data. So we can't have accurate predictive models without having a full understanding of the history that you're using to be able to build these predictive models from. So this is what digital transformation is all about. You want to be a digitally transformed company, to be making more data, to be more data driven, to be using technology and to be using data to make decisions. And now we've got access to more data than any point in history, but organisations are unable to capitalise on this data because there's a shortage of individuals with skills. And at the same time, we have every single job role, as I mentioned at the start. LinkedIn is saying that 39% of jobs require data analytics skills. So it's regardless of sector, it's regardless of job role, it's regardless of function where you are in the business, but you're exposed to greater volumes of data. And we lack the skills to be able to analyse this data and generate these insights that inform these data-driven decisions. When I'm talking to my clients, I always talk about this concept of purple people. And purple people, the visual probably doesn't show it very, very clearly, but this is a challenge within the sector, which is typically you have your red people who are your technical people, your data people that probably sit within defined data teams, and your business people. So your business people are the ones who understand the competitive requirements of the business, they understand the strategy, they are the domain experts, the subject matter experts. And purple people are these very valuable, very rare people that sit in this intersection. So they are business people, but they have the technical data skills to be able to tell that data-driven story. And this is our ambition. These are the programs that we build along with our employers. A tool that I use when I'm speaking to our clients is this hierarchy of data literacy needs. And this really helps organisations kind of determine where they are and what the requirements are. So I've mentioned already this need for data analytics, this skill set, it's required in every organisation, every sector. And data literacy skills, they're for everybody. It doesn't mean that they need to become Python coder. Or a data scientist. And there's this shortage of skills. So it's creating this disconnect between your specialists, so these are your data scientists, and the rest of the organisation. And there are reports that claim that data can drive this revolutionary change within a business. And it changes the business strategy. And it's a perception that this is driven by cutting edge data science. But in the real world, many tasks can be achieved in Microsoft Excel. So we work with our clients, we support them in building this culture of data. So from a bottom up approach, so grassroots approach, I should say, sorry. And we are empowering people within a business to become confident data workers, so to be able to use data analytics. So what we're seeing is that by putting together a training program and championing employees, this enables this widespread adoption and an insights-driven culture from every angle of the business. So in building this data-driven culture, there are typically these 5 layers that you can see on the visual in front of you. So we start at the core, and this is for everybody across the organisation. And by addressing this core, by putting together a formal training programme, what this enables a business to do is it starts to raise awareness. So this is what helps achieve a more data-driven culture. So everybody in the business has a raised awareness of data, the significance, the opportunity. They start to develop this analytics mindset. They start to look for evidence when they're making decisions, so they make data-driven decisions. It improves the quality of your data. I mentioned earlier that we can't have good AI, we can't have good analytics without having good quality data. So it's making sure that everybody is always mindful of the importance, and it also ensures that everybody in the business is aware of the legal and ethical issues around data, so they have an understanding around consent, privacy, and also at this layer we start to introduce people to the tools. So teams are not reliant on your centralized data team to give them the insights that they need. It's self-service. People are confident. The next layer is our data citizen. So these are your business people. These are super smart employees. They're not specifically trained in coding or statistics. They're what I call our frequent data users. So they have insightful perspectives of the business problems, and they want to be able to apply data solutions. So they need the skills. So your professional population. So people at all levels, all different job roles, throughout the organisation, they're exposed to greater volumes of data, but they're working with it in a very old-fashioned way. So your typical frequent data user, your typical data citizen, is somebody who probably spends the majority of the time in an Excel spreadsheet, or they're working in an MI system. They are required to produce reports, measure performance, and there's an opportunity that we're going to empower this population. So we put them through a training program that gives them the technical skills in this low code tool environment, so low code, no code tooling environment. So we're talking really the data analytics toolkit within Microsoft Excel and the visualization tools, so things like Alteryx, Power BI, Tableau. So you don't need to learn how to code or to be able to work with big data. Our next layer is our population of experts, and it's a smaller population. These are typically people who work within your data team. So they are often within your centralized data function. They will have the word data in their job title, and they're using the more advanced tools. So they're using things like SQL, Python, R, and they're working with much more complex data. They have the ability to be able to identify patterns and trends in your data over time. So they're developing your predictive models. So these are models that are based on your historical data that will determine, and they're automating a lot of your processes as well. The next layer is a relatively small number of your highly skilled data scientists and experienced analysts. So this often forms the core of your centralized data science functions. And your scientists are the people who are responsible for mining your data. So they're pulling it from multiple different sources, and they're able to knit this data together, but at a much more strategic level. So also your data scientists are the people that pull the insights from your data. And then finally at the top, we have our data-driven leaders. So these are our modern leaders or our future leaders. They're not necessarily required to have the skill set to be able to do, or to, the technical skills to be able to work with the data, but they need to know enough about data science to understand what can be done. So they need to be able to communicate with this team of specialists and drive the direction. And they also need to understand the link between the data and the real world drivers. So we go back to this concept of purple people, these people that sit in the intersection. They have effective decision-making frameworks which are based on the data. So that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, David, to tell you a little bit more about the research that we've done at BPP.
Cool. Thanks very much, Louise. Okay. So yes, as Louise says, when we take a look at the data requirements in a business and the future technology requirements and digital transformation requirements, a lot of the time we end up talking about skills. So my job at BPP is to conduct market research and collate market intelligence related to skills, so that I can help businesses that we work with to describe the sort of skills that they're going to need. And it means I spend a huge amount of time thinking about data skills. So one thing that I'm going to do with you this morning or this afternoon rather, is take a look, first of all, at a language for talking about analytics. So first of all, we're going to take a look at a useful definition that you can use when you're thinking about analytics, either for yourself or for other people in your businesses. We're going to look at a definition that you might find useful there. We're then going to have a think about the different types of analytics required by different types of professionals. And we're going to use some examples as we go through, and then have a think, hopefully, about the sort of analytics that you and the people around you in your businesses, you might see there too. And finally, we're going to have a quick look at how we use that sort of information. If we have all of this information on skills, if we can help businesses to identify the sort of data and technology related skills that they need, we then can do some interesting things with it. We can use it to assess skills gaps and build plans for addressing those skills gaps. So that's what we're going to take a look at last there. But we're going to begin with a useful definition for analytics, because talking about analytics and talking about the use of data can be tricky. When you talk about, when you just ask the relatively basic question, what is analytics? You come to a few difficulties. If you say something like, analytics is the art of analyzing data, well, that's technically true, but that's so massively broad, it's not really helpful to us. It could encapsulate, things like collating information from Word documents or building predictive models, wildly different things. So we need something a little more precise than just analytics is about analyzing data. There's also quite a common misconception that analytics is something new, because a lot of the tools we use to do analytics in businesses now are new, but that doesn't mean that a lot of the techniques we're using are new. One of the things I like doing in other sessions sometimes is actually turning back the clock and going back a few hundred years in history and looking at the origin of certain advanced techniques, or what we consider to be advanced techniques. People have been doing this for hundreds of years, but now we can do these things at greater scale and with greater efficiency and with tools that have snazzier names than they used to in the past. So analytics is not necessarily something new, it's an extension of something that people have been doing with data for a very, very long time. So we're going to begin with a definition, something that anchors us and gives us something we can work with when we're thinking about analytics in our organizations. And this is great. This comes from Gartner. This is Gartner's model for analytics maturity. So Gartner say that if you're thinking about analytics and analytics tasks, you basically work from left to right. On the left-hand side, you've got what is called descriptive analytics. This is where you use data to describe something that's happened in the past. It's kind of what data was traditionally designed to do. You record a thing and then you can describe a thing. At the next step up, you've got diagnostic analytics. This is where you take your data that describes something that happens in the past and you try and work out why. You try and ascribe reasons, you try and make connections between the data that you have. So you're diagnosing what's going on. That's the next step up there. It's more difficult, but it's more valuable. Then the next step up from that is predictive analytics. This is when you use your data from the past, your diagnosis of why something happened, and your models, your predictions about what might happen in the future, to kind of build a picture. And that's predictive analytics. You're using that past data and your assumptions about what might happen in the future to predict. Then at the very highest level, you've got something called prescriptive analytics. This is where you use all of that information, your description of the past, your prediction of what's going to happen, to tell people you should therefore do this. You should prescribe a course of action. So if you ask Gartner, that's their model of looking at analytics maturity. And it's really, really useful when we're thinking about this in a business context. Because if you think about some of the modern analytical techniques that people get really excited about, things like machine learning or artificial intelligence, what they're actually doing is they're using very complex models, sure, but what they're doing is they're predicting what's going to happen in the future. And people have been doing this in more traditional ways for many, many years. Regression fundamentally is a method of trying to predict, given new data, what's going to happen. Machine learning, some models are essentially regression compounded, done millions of times, billions of times. So when we talk about machine learning, we're looking at predictive analytics. When we talk about looking at your Excel spreadsheets and trying to describe what happened in your business last year with the budgets, that might be descriptive analytics or diagnostic analytics. But this model allows us to think about what we're doing and to say, well, how does it fit here? How can we categorize it? And then, how can we take that further? How can we start building out a useful definition of the analytics we're doing? So we're going to use this model in a second to take it a bit further and think about the sort of tasks and tools and roles that might fit in each of these categories. But first, I think it's useful to just take a second and think about the ways that you might use these different types of analytics in your organization. Or maybe if you're interested in HR, L&D people, maybe have a think about the way that some of these types of analytics might be used by the people you're thinking about training. Are you talking about using data to describe a situation? Is it descriptive? Are you trying to make inferences about why something happened? Or are you trying to do that more advanced stuff and make predictions about the future? So this is a useful model that allows us to sort of ground ourselves and think about definitions of analytics. What we're going to do next, though, is we're going to take this a little bit further and we're going to think about different types of analytics professional and what sort of things they might do. So if we take Gartner's model and we sort of we rearrange it ever so slightly into types of analytics tasks, we could configure it in the way that I have on the screen. Again, this is not an absolute science. You can come up with your own configurations, but this is something that I find helpful. At the lowest level, we've got data collection and management. You collect the data, you organize the data, you make sure other people can use the data. That's what you're doing there. Then you've got reporting, descriptive analysis, and diagnostic analysis. You use that data to then say things about that data, often descriptive things, sometimes diagnostic things. Then you've got predictive analysis using traditional methods. This is what I was saying earlier about something like regression. Technically, it's a predictive analytic technique. It's not as old as time, but it's a few hundred years old, and it's something that you can still use to make predictions. Then at the very highest level, you've got predictive analysis using new or advanced methods. So if you think about the people you've got in your business, most people probably are going to need to know a little bit about data collection and management, a little bit about descriptive analysis. Then you've got some specific roles that are going to need to know quite a bit more. If you think about business intelligence people, for example, they spend most of their time stuck into that second stage there, reporting, descriptive analysis, dashboards for the exec to read and have a mull over, that sort of thing. If you think about data architects and engineers, especially in larger organizations with larger data sets, they're in that first phase there. They're thinking about the collection, they're thinking about the management. If you think about machine learning engineers and some of the more advanced analysts that Louise was talking about earlier, well, they'd be at the top end there. That's where the machine learning happens. That's where the really advanced stuff happens. Then you've got roles that sort of draw in a variety of these different things. So for me, for example, my background is market research, which means I do a bit of data collection. I do a bit of reporting, often descriptive, sometimes diagnostic, and sometimes I do predictive analysis using traditional methods. So I sort of span a few of these, and there are going to be lots of people in your organizations that span quite a few of these too. You can also look at this and you can think about the sort of types of analysis that people might be doing at each stage. So as I've gone through, I've kind of mentioned these things, but you can see on the screen, we've got organizing data, producing basic charts, regression, and then supervised machine learning at the top end. You can also look at these stages and have a think about the tools that people might use. You know, data warehousing, Salesforce, SQL, the sort of things that might underpin that at the lowest level, through SPSS, Excel, probably, all the way up to Python, and some of the more advanced Python modules you might use to build predictive models. So you can look at this and you can sort of decompose, take a look at the different tools that people might use at different stages. But at the end of it all, the most valuable thing to do is take a look at all of this and to ask what it means to you. Which tasks do you do? Which sort of analysis do you perform? Does this match the way that people in your organization think about analysis and the way that you might think about training for them? So hopefully that gives you a nice overview, a nice idea of how we use some of the information that we're collecting, some of the research that we conduct on data skills. The last thing I want to do here is talk to you a bit about how we use this sort of information. So I've talked you through some of the things that we've concluded from our research and our conversations with clients. Now, obviously, if you took a look at all of this, you'd have the opportunity to take this information, have a look at your organization and work out what's going on. And we could perhaps help you further your understanding of that and plan training in accordance with it. So one thing that we do is we conduct research. We try and take a look at future skills requirements, and we ask professionals in their roles to think about what they're going to need for the future. This comes from a survey of HR professionals, primarily in Singapore, Malaysia, and Hong Kong. And we asked them to predict which skills they thought were going to be most important for them as HR professionals. And they said big data analytics fundamentals. It's right up there at the top. And we've got this for a variety of different roles too. So we conduct this research, we try and work out what people are going to need in the future. And we do also use this for something we call Capability Plus. So as we've done here, we've sort of gone through a model for data analytics and how to think about how it might apply to your organizations. Well, we actually have a formal way of doing that starts with skills insight and research, goes through creating pictures of skills, heat mapping those skills, assessing how they are in your organization, and then planning training as a result. So I know that was quite a whistle-stop tour of what we do there, but hopefully, especially the descriptions of analytics tasks, hopefully that was useful and some of it echoed what you're experiencing in your organizations.